anyhow, this is going to be the last webinar for a few weeks. I'm going to take next week and the week after that off from doing the webinar. So I'm glad to be here with you tonight, and I hope that I'm able to get through many of your questions. For those of you that are new to the webinars, the way that these work, you get to create the webinar with your questions. And for those of you that are back again, I'm glad to see all of you. Actually, I'm glad to see the new people tonight too. The way that you create the webinar then is to write your questions. And where you can do that is over on the right-hand side of your screen down at the bottom. There is a chat box. Write your question to me in that chat box. Once you post it, once you hit the enter key, it will be sent to me. The way that I take these questions, I do take one at a time, obviously, but I don't take more than one per person usually, because I have so many questions that we have to get through. I will post those questions on the screen so that those of you that are watching this live can actually see the question as I'm reading it. But I also do a recorded version of the webinars, and for the recorded version of the webinar, the question does not show up on the screen. So those of you that are listening and just realize, or listening to a recorded version, just realize that I'm reading the question to you just for you, so you can hear it. I am creating a recording of the webinar tonight, and tomorrow morning you'll get an email from me indicating that recording is ready when I get it edited up. That usually is pretty much first thing in the morning my time, so I'm out in Seattle, Washington. So usually somewhere around 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning, my time, I'll have that put out to you in the form of an email, okay? So with no further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna go ahead and post the first question. Generally, I do these as 1.5 hour webinars unless I poop out in the middle of it. Just keep in mind, I've already had a long day of patient care. So sometimes towards the end, I start kind of wearing a little bit, but I enjoy doing these and I actually usually get energized by doing them too. So we'll take as many questions as I can as long as I hold up. No more than 1.5 hours though. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Hello, Sarah. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Is stevia effective if added to food, or must it be consumed alone? Also, do you happen to know the name of the reputable LLMD near Philadelphia, PA? Thank you so much for all you do. I've learned so much from you and your book. Best to you always. Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. In terms of an LLMD near Philadelphia, yes, and I know her first name, and I'm blanking on her last name. It's Anne is her first name. She actually has been very active in ILADS over the year, and I am just having one of those 54-year-old moments that I'm not remembering her last name. Hopefully it'll come to me I can even see her face. Hopefully it'll come to me as we're doing the rest of the webinar tonight. If you're wondering, if you can't figure it out though, get a hold of ILADS at ilads.org and ask them for a list of who their practitioners are near Philadelphia, in and around Philadelphia, okay? All right, so everyone, stevia is a plant that has a sweet flavor to it. And about, it was last year, I believe it was last year, there was a research piece published by a PhD named Eva Chapi, and her last name is S-A-P-I. Eva's running one of the more unique Lyme disease research labs in the country in New Haven, Connecticut. And what she's been looking for is novel approaches, new ways to treat Lyme. And she's been looking at stevia for a few reasons, or a couple reasons actually. One is stevia, according to her Petri dish experiments, has the ability to break down biofilms. So biofilms, as many of you know, is a layer of slime that can cover Lyme germs and block out our ability for the immune system to attack Lyme, but also for antibiotics, herbal or prescription, to treat Lyme. Okay, so she's been looking at stevia as a way of helping break down biofilms. And in her most recent research that she did on stevia that was published, I believe, I think it may have been the end of 2015 or the first month of 2016. In that piece, she was looking at using stevia to treat what is known as persister Lyme. So let me talk to you about persister Lyme and then about biofilms and what stevia can do or not do as far as that's concerned. So regarding biofilm, what she was able to show in her most recent research, the one that I was just talking about, is that when lime cultures grown on a petri dish are exposed to stevia, that about 45% of the biofilm goes away. All right. So, though many of you may be familiar with stevia, the people are proposing that it can be used really to break up biofilms. When you look at what her research says on a petri dish, it only reduces biofilm size by 45%. That's still significant. Okay. She's got other research from the past. Like 5 years ago, she did petri dish experiments where she showed that the two herbs Banderol cemento, that many of you know I love to treat Lyme, that Banderol cemento get rid of Lyme germs, but also remove 100% of biofilm. All right. So I just want to put that in context. She's also done petri dish experiments where she showed that the prescription medicine tinidazole gets rid of 95% of biofilm. And on similar petri dish experiments, she showed, I believe, that doxycycline gets rid of 70% of biofilm. Okay. So although I know there's a lot of concentration out there, a lot more activity going on, I can tell by the questions about what to do about biofilms, keep in mind, even your antibiotics have the ability to break down biofilm to some degree. Okay. So you don't necessarily need to do anything really targeted more than antibiotics. At times you do, but not always. All right. So stevia can break down biofilms. It's one of the things that seems to do it about 45%, according to her petri dish experiments. Now, the other thing that she looked at is, could stevia treat these things called persister cells? Okay, so what are persister cells? Well, when Lyme is exposed to antibiotics for a period of time, some of those cells will convert into what are called persister cells. And they're spirochetes that basically go into hibernation, all right? So just like bears go into hibernation and they stop responding to the world around them, Lyme germs can do the same thing too. They just slow down and they stop responding to the antibiotics. Now, they don't technically, in a persister cell, become resistant to the antibiotics, but they do become tolerant. And what I mean by that is, if we can wake them up, if we can get them to come out of hibernation, if we can get them growing again, they will start to respond to the antibiotics again. A germ that becomes truly resistant to an antibiotic, that occurs more at a genetic level. When the germ becomes resistant to an antibiotic, even if you wake it up, it's still not going to respond, okay? So according to her research on a petri dish, she was able to get good benefit of killing persister Lyme, as well as removing about 45% of biofilm, all right? Now, the problem with her research, and I've written about her research too, you can find an article on the Treat Lyme book site. The problem with her research is it's a petri dish, all right? And who knows what that means in a living person? Will it work that well in a living person? And I've just started trying it out with my patients, and it's really too early for me to tell. I'm concerned, though, that you're not going to get a great enough absorption of stevia to really make a difference inside of us, all right? But what I am recommending people to do is to take up to 8 drops twice a day of the stevia. And I'm still trying to see if in living people, not petri dishes, but in living people, does stevia make a difference? The brand I like using is a Nutramedix brand, and I'm recommending at 8 drops twice a day. I would start at 1 drop twice a day and then build up from there by increasing by 1 drop per dose every day, okay? And so I've written an article about that. There may be a little bit more detail in the article about stevia, but keep in mind, it's being promoted as something to treat persister Lyme and also to remove biofilms, and it's based on petri dish experiments, all right? All right, let's see. Can it be consumed alone, to answer your question? So Sarah, I had to let everyone know what stevia is and why it's used. So I know I can get rather long-winded. You know, you can use stevia in food or use it alone. I'm going both ways at this point. I don't think that we know from science what is the best way, though. Okay? All right. Good luck to you. Thank you for that question. All right, let's go to the next question here. Hello, Pat. Let's say, hi, doctor. Have you heard of Dr. Jernigan of the Hansa Center? It seems like a Buhner type protocol. So yeah, Dr. David Jernigan is a chiropractor that has a Lyme treatment center in I believe in Kansas City. He focuses on detox work, though, okay? And he will use herbal antimicrobials to kill Lyme, but a large focus of his work is on detoxing. He believes that's the major reason that people don't get better from Lyme when they have a hard time. I get mixed results. I have patients that go see him. I see some people that get a lot worse when they go there. I see some people that get some benefit. But on the whole, I'm not a big believer in the results that a big proponent based on the results that I see that some of my patients get from going to see Dr. Jernigan at the Hansa Center. Okay, that's just based on what I've seen here. I haven't met him. I have seen some of his protocols, and I think they could help. I'm just not. I don't see the results in what is reported to me from my patients, and it is a different protocol actually than Buhner protocol. All right, I would take the Buhner over doing what Jernigan proposes, though. Okay, all right. Thank you for that question, Pat. All right, let's move on here. Next question. Hello, Colleen. Let's see. Repeatedly throughout the day experience intense waves of out of the blue where I suddenly feel like I'm burning up. But if I take my temperature, it's 97 degrees. It feels like heat slowly and suddenly envelops me, along with debilitating fatigue and weakness that feels like I'm dying. Why might this be? So I don't know for sure, okay, but what I can hypothesize is some instability in your adrenaline, anti-adrenaline system, or we call that the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So there is a nerve that comes out of the bottom of your neck or out of the base of your skull, right back around in here, that's called the vagal nerve. And the vagal nerve is what causes your heart to work, your intestinal systems to work, regulates temperature, causes the release of adrenaline and anti-adrenaline, all right? When you get adrenaline surges, sometimes that's going to give you that feeling of heat. And then when it goes down, that can give you just profound fatigue sometimes too. So I suspect that's what it is happening. The vagal nerve can be infected by Lyme, by the Lyme germ, that is, okay? And then also the vagal nerve can be affected in how it operates whenever you have the co-infection called Babesia. So that many of you know, if you are bitten by a tick that gives you Lyme, not only can it give you Lyme, which is called Borrelia, but it might also transmit some other infections, of which there is this one other infection, a blood parasite actually, which is called Babesia, okay? All right. So there you go, Colleen. That's my hypothesis at least, okay? All right. Thank you for the question. All right, let's see where we are here. All right. Hello, Kelly. Let's see. How long does it take to get over and best to treat it? Thanks. Okay. So I'm not sure what you mean by best to treat it, but I'm going to answer the first part of your question at least. How long does it take to get over chronic Lyme? Well, just so you know, any question you have about Lyme disease, I probably have a written answer for you, all right? And so I just, I'm going to do a screen share, and I am going to answer your question as part of doing the screen share. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to show everyone the Treat Lyme book. So many of you may know about the Treat Lyme book. That's where you would have signed up to do the webinars. But this is the site called the Treat Lyme book. The major part of the Treat Lyme book is information about Lyme disease, okay? And so I've organized it into chapters that you can find by clicking on the chapters link up here, or you could even search. You could do the search function by clicking here and type in how long does it take to recover, okay? But there is a chapter that I have which is about the odds and statistics, recovery time and odds. Here it is right here. And in here, I have an article about Lyme and pregnancy. What's the chances of your baby getting it? But then the other article I have in this section is getting healthy. Will I? When? How do I? All right. I would suggest after we get done with the webinar tonight, you take a look at this article if you have more questions than what I'm about ready to cover. Okay. All right. So let me go back here. So yeah, I just wanted to show you how to use the Treat Lyme book, because basically about any question you might have about Lyme, I probably have written an article about it in the Treat Lyme book. So you don't have to wait for these webinars to ask your questions, okay? And besides, I won't get through everybody's questions tonight anyhow, even though I'll try to. All right, so how long does it take? On average of 2 years. All right, now notice the word I said on average 2 years. And that's because there are some people that take 6 months. There are some people that it can take 3 and 4 years. And so this is people with chronic Lyme that I'm talking about, people that have had Lyme in them for a year or more. on average, it's 2 years to recover. All right. Now, in terms of recovery with treatment, based on what I see in my practice, I think that 90% of people get improvement. That means that 10% don't. So for some reason, we have not figured out a way as Lyme doctors to get at and to help 10% of people. And that's a sad reality of this illness. It can be very difficult to treat. All right. In terms of how quickly do you turn around in Lyme? Well, there's an unpublished study that looked at this, and it actually reflects what I see in my practice too, which is once you get on a good Lyme treatment, by 3 months, 30% of people start having improvements. By 6 months, 60% have improvements, and by 9 months, 90% have improvements, okay? So that's about the odds of how quickly you'll turn around. And what the key part of that is realize it may take time. The other problem with the Lyme treatment is you may go backwards at first before you start getting better, even once you get on the antibiotics. And the reason you may go backwards at first is as we kill Lyme germs, we might trigger something called a Herxheimer reaction. And what happens in a Herxheimer reaction is as the immune system sees the dead bug parts and proteins and toxins that get released from killing the Lyme germ with antibiotics, it reacts by making a bunch of inflammation chemicals called cytokines. And those cytokines make you feel bad, and they make you hurt. They make your brain not work correctly. They can give you low energy. They basically give you what we call Lyme symptoms. In fact, Lyme disease symptoms are actually symptoms of too many cytokines, okay? So as we start treating you, you make it worse, okay? Now there's one last key part about the odds that I want to tell you about, and that is when we treat you, there's a 90% chance of getting better, and the improvements can range up to 100%, meaning some people recover 100% from Lyme, but a number of people may not get back 100%. Maybe you get 50% better. Maybe you get 70%. Maybe you get 90% better, okay? And in my practice, I don't see that there's any predictors as to who's going to get how far. There are some of the sickest people I've ever seen that get 100% well. And there are some people that I consider to have light versions of Lyme. They have mild fatigue, mild brain thinking problems, for instance. And I can't get them to move no matter what I do. And as many of you know, I have a lot of things I try. I mean, I talk about them in these webinars, and you can find them on my website. But so it can be tricky to get back 100% in some people, okay? So at the beginning, it doesn't matter how long you've been sick. You have as great of a chance of getting 100% well as anyone else. Okay, that's based on what I see. The other thing is you have as great of a chance of being average and taking 2 years to get well as anyone else. All right. All right. So what's the best way to treat Lyme? Well, follow my Lyme disease treatment protocol. All right. So let's look at my Lyme disease treatment protocol. I'll do a quick screen share here. Okay. So when you have Lyme, you have to realize, so there's this tab here called the treatment protocol. This is my Lyme disease treatment guideline, okay? I wrote this so that you could do a lot of Lyme treatment on your own, even without the help of your physician, or you could bring ideas to your physician. And what it addresses is all those things that I think that are important, that I have found beneficial. So the big point I want to make is to treat Lyme and to recover from Lyme, it requires more than antibiotics. It is not enough to kill your Lyme germs because there is a whole mess created by Lyme that's going to make it so your immune system doesn't work well, and you need to correct those problems, all right? So the first thing you want to do is get sleep. I give you ideas on how to do that here, all right? That is as important as being on antibiotics, all right? Number 2, you want to make sure you're on a paleo diet. A paleo diet is shown to help improve the function of energy factories in your cells called mitochondria. So you have the energy to repair, okay? And it also helps nerve cells function better so you can start thinking better too, all right? Number 3, lower inflammation chemicals called cytokines. I mentioned those tonight already. They're what give you your Lyme symptoms, but they also suppress the immune system. Number 4, be on something that helps your body deal with stress, and I recommend an herb called ashwagandha to do that. Number 5, correct hormonal problems like low adrenal function and low thyroid function. And in this section of the treatment guideline, I tell you what to do, and I even tell you how to figure out if it is a problem for you, okay? Number 6 in my treatment guideline is to make sure you're on a good multivitamin. Number 7, look to see if you might have too many yeast growing in your intestines. And you may wonder why I look at that. Well, yeast live in your intestines, and if they grow too much because of immune suppression caused by Lyme or because you're on antibiotics to treat Lyme, those yeast trigger more cytokines. Remember, I've talked about cytokines already a few times tonight. All right, you want to lower cytokines, and to do that, you want to make sure you get your yeast out. So you can use my questionnaire here. I'm going to circle it right there. If you click on this tab here, that'll take you to my screening questionnaire. And if you score over 140 on the screening questionnaire, you should treat yeast. All right. Next thing you want to do is treat your Lyme infection. Now notice that's part 8. Those 7 other parts are more important than starting your Lyme antibiotics because you need to do all those things to get well too. All right. And in here, I give you ideas on what you can do, including my favorite 2 herbs to kill Lyme. These 2 herbs, Otoba bark extract and cat's claw, in my opinion, work as well as prescription antibiotics when it comes to treating Lyme. Okay, I tell you how to work on that here. You can even click at the article that I've written about those 2 herbs, all right? I talk about detoxification in part 9. Part 10, you got to treat Bartonella and Babesia. I talk about that here. Part 11, deal with additional, if you have various symptoms, you can look at other natural medicines. Part 12, get exercise. Part 13 of my protocol is what to do at 6 months and beyond if you're not getting better, all right? And there are a lot of things you can do, and I'm just listed here. You can read through these later, all right? Then the last thing I want to talk about is in treating Lyme, if you're doing better and then you get worse, think yeast in the intestines, okay? In fact, 90% of the time, actually make that 80 to 90% of the time that I'm treating somebody that's been doing better with their Lyme, and that may even means 50% better, 20%, 30% better, and then I'm treating them and they go backwards, the first thing I'm going to wonder is, did too many yeast move into the intestines? It is profound what too many yeast can do in the intestines, okay? So don't forget to look for that. All right, so if you're in the middle of treatment and you're wondering if you got too many yeast, things that make you think about it are increased sugar cravings, increased intestinal gasiness or bloating, worsened fatigue. If you're a woman, vaginal itching, vaginal discharge, rectal itching, and then also sores in your mouth or having difficulty swallowing. And then the big one, which is kind of strange, is that you can get more skin rashes or acne if you have too many yeast in the intestines. And I've looked into the research about why that has happened. And what the proposal is that yeast in the intestines release toxins that interact with your skin cells, leading to some of these skin changes like acne or like eczema, okay? So Kelly, take a look at my Lyme disease treatment protocol. Actually, everyone, take a look at that Lyme disease treatment protocol. Make sure you're addressing all of those areas that I talk about there, because it's critical to do that to get over Lyme, to correct all the abnormal things created by having Lyme in you so that you can get your immune system working better and your detox systems working better so that you have the best chance of recovering from this illness, okay? All right, thank you for that question, Kelly. All right, I'm going to get rid of Kelly's question. Let's see here, get rid of that. All right, I've got to just scroll up deeper into my questions just to make sure that no one is saying they cannot hear me. And it looks like everyone is on board here tonight. Okay, let's see here. Hello, Joanne. Let's see. What do you recommend for headache and vertigo symptoms? Okay, so vertigo, everyone, means a spinning sensation, a dizziness, kind of like a merry-go-round feeling. Okay, merry-go-round feeling is also vertigo. Okay. All right, so for headaches, one of the big things that you ought to do is lower your cytokines. So remember, I've talked about cytokines a number of times tonight. Cytokines give you most of this mess called Lyme disease, all right? So one of the things I would do for headaches is make sure you're taking the curcumin that I recommend. Curcumin is a component of turmeric, the Indian seasoning turmeric. You want to take it as 500 milligrams 3 times a day, all right? That gets inside of white blood cells and helps lower cytokine production. Something else that is very useful for people that have headaches is to take magnesium. Now, magnesium comes in different salt forms, okay? And the best salt form that I have found for helping with muscle pains like you get in Lyme and even headaches, because a lot of your headaches are actually muscle headache pains, is to take magnesium malate. There's also magnesium citrate, magnesium sulfate, magnesium glycinate, magnesium. There's other ones too, but those are the big ones, okay? But for your muscle pains and your headaches, magnesium malate is what I have found to work the best. And I usually like to dose it at about, it usually comes as a 150 or 200 milligram pill. And the way you're going to wind up using it is you're going to have somebody take 400 to 600 milligrams a night, or I'm going to have somebody take it as 400 to 600 milligrams a night. If you're taking too much magnesium, it can give you loose, watery stools, in which case you just need to back off on how much you take, okay? In terms of vertigo, vertigo is a little bit tricky because for vertigo, that usually is going to be part of the Lyme infection or Bartonella infection, involving the balance parts of your brain. And you need to make sure you're treating for Lyme, maybe Bartonella. It's possible that Bartonella can be part of this, okay? So treat the germs, all right, number one. Another alternative medicine treatment that can be helpful for vertigo is to do an osteopathic type treatment, sometimes also done by massage therapists. It's called cranial sacral therapy. And that's CRANIO, cranio, and then sacral, SACRAL, and then therapy, all right? And what craniosacral therapy does is it applies really light pressure to the skulls of your brain, back here, sides, top, even in around the jaw. And a practitioner that does that, I have training in doing that too, is going to apply the weight of a nickel, 5 grams. I mean, this is light stuff, okay? And you put really light pressure on the skull and you create pressure changes, which creates changes in how your spinal fluid flows around the brain. And it has a relaxing effect that can heal agitated nerves, okay? So that's one thing to consider trying. Another thing to consider trying is an herb called ginkgo biloba. Many of you may know about ginkgo biloba as being the herb that people with Alzheimer's take, for instance. But ginkgo biloba helps make red blood cells more flexible, more bendable, so that they'll move deeper into really, really narrow blood vessels that feed your brain and your hearing nerves and your balance nerves, okay? And so you want to use it as 80 milligrams 2 times a day. Give it a try for a month. If it's not helping by a month, I probably think it's not going to work, okay? Finally, another good thing to do for vertigo is to find a skilled practitioner of either Chinese acupuncture or Japanese style acupuncture. If you were here in the Seattle area, the acupuncturist that I work with that does a great job with people with Lyme, because he gets it, he just does a great job, is a guy named Randy Clare. That's C-L-E-R-E. Randy has great success in treating these kind of problems. Just Google him. You'll find him. He practices just north of Seattle. His name's Randy Clare. Okay. He's a great acupuncturist too. All right. So anyhow, I hope that answers your question, Joanne. Good luck to you. All right. Let's see here. Hello, Samantha. Hold on here, I got to have a sip of water. Samantha, that's a great question. So Samantha's question is Lyme disease slow to grow, meaning that if we get infected, symptoms can manifest over many months or years, or is it always about 2 weeks to a month after being infected? Okay. So there's some different parts of that question. So yes, Lyme disease grows slowly. Okay. It replicates slowly. By some estimates, the life cycle of the Lyme germ is 4 weeks to 8 months, for instance. Okay. And it just takes forever to replicate. Now, that may account for why in acute Lyme it can take a week usually before people get acute symptoms, okay? Because it just takes a long time to grow. However, the other part of your question is why is it that sometimes people take years or months to develop symptoms, all right? And that probably doesn't have so much to do with the growing aspect of the germ, but rather the immune system losing its battle to keep Lyme under control. So I believe that there are many people that walk around out there that have Lyme infections in them that don't have Lyme disease. I want to say that again. I think there are a lot of people walking around out there that have Lyme infection but don't have Lyme disease. And what I mean by Lyme disease is they get symptoms from having Lyme living in them. Many of us have immune systems that can keep Lyme under control or even get rid of it. Our antibodies and our white blood cells do what they're supposed to do, which is get germs out or keep germs under control, okay? So we have many germs that live in our skin. That's our immune system keeping it under control. We also know that around 10-20% of people cohabitate with another infection called chlamydia pneumoniae, something called mycoplasma pneumoniae, 3 viruses. One's called HHV6, another one called cytomegalovirus, the monovirus. Many of us live with these germs and are quite healthy. Our immune system keeps them under control. And I think that our immune systems, for many of us, have the same ability to keep Lyme under control as well, too, okay? But at some point, in some of us, our immune systems lose the battle. Now, there's no studies that have been done to say why. And there's no studies that have been done to say what is the average length from when somebody gets Lyme to when they actually manifest symptoms when it's chronic, okay? Now, the big thing to keep in mind, what I see is a lot of people start manifesting symptoms of Lyme usually when they've had some kind of stressful event go on in life. You'll see that happen quite often, not always, but quite often. And that's because some of the most, one of the things that suppresses your immune system the most is stress, whether it's physical stress, whether it's emotional stress. Those are the things that can cause reactivation of Lyme, okay? But the good thing is if you can deal with that stress, sometimes the immune system steps in, takes control, and then you get your Lyme gets back into a better place again. All right. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you, Samantha. And good luck. Hello, Victoria. Let's see. What would you do for Raynaud's syndrome? Do you think lumbar kinase would help? If so, how much per day and for how long? What do you recommend taking? What do you recommend taking for supplemental proteolytic enzymes? All right. So there's a lot of parts to your question there. All right. So everyone, Raynaud's syndrome is a condition where you wind up getting cold digits that either turn white or blue, okay? And they will turn white or blue usually, and they can hurt. It can be quite painful, actually, in some people too. And it can happen when you have temperature variations. So for some people, it happens when they go into cold environments. But in other people, it can happen when they go into hot environments. It's the change in temperature that can trigger that, all right? And so we think it's due to spasm of the blood vessels. Your small blood vessels in your digits will go into spasm, limiting blood flow, all right? So from a prescription medicine standpoint, there's a group of blood pressure medicines that can help. They're called the calcium channel blockers. There's one called nifedipine, for instance, that can be helpful. There is something called Norvasc that might be helpful, but they're called calcium channel blockers, okay? So one option is a prescription medicine, all right? Now, the other thing that complicates it in Lyme disease is that as a result of having Lyme infection, some people develop thickening of their blood. So it will not flow as easily into narrow blood vessels, all right? So you have less blood flow, therefore you don't have as much heat going in and you get the coldness as well too. All right, so what that thickness is caused by is as part of having chronic infection, the immune system will make more of the blood clotting protein called fibrin. And one of the things that can break up fibrin are proteolytic enzymes. That's what you're writing about here with your questions, okay? So my favorite enzyme to break up sticky blood, as I call it, but also to break up biofilms, because a biofilm, as an aside here, okay, a biofilm is a sugar slime layer held together in a protein skeleton. And that protein skeleton is made up of fibrin, the blood clotting protein, all right? So the enzyme I'm about ready to talk about can help break down biofilms as well too, as well as thin your blood out a little bit, all right? So what it's called, my favorite is lumbar kinase. And what lumbar kinase is a group of enzymes that come from the skin of earthworms. I love this illness. We've got to do some crazy things to manage it sometimes. But earthworms, all right? I find it's better than serrapeptase. I find it's better than nattokinase. I find it's better than wobezyme. What other enzymes have I missed? I've missed some other ones, but my favorite is lumbrokinase. All right. You can either find it. There's an allergy research project or allergy research product called lumbrokinase that you can find at our store, for instance, if you want that. Also, there's a brand called Boluke. That's Boluke. That is a brand of lumbrokinase. Either one of those is great products. They be careful as you read the label. Both of those products, the size of the pill is 20 milligrams, although it's deceiving. It looks like when you read the label, if you don't pay attention to the serving size, it makes it look like one pill is actually 40 milligrams. But read the serving size when they say 40 milligrams is 2 pills. So a pill is 20 milligrams, all right? And you want to do one pill twice a day, either to decrease sticky blood or, in other words, help with Raynaud's here, or to get rid of biofilms. And the thing about lumbrokinase is if you put it in your gut with other things like medicines or supplements or food, it's going to act as a digestive enzyme and break them down. And you don't want to do that. So take your lumbrokinase on an empty stomach by 1 hour either side, okay? So do not take it directly with food or medicines by 1 hour, all right? Now, so one thing you can do for Raynaud's from a natural medicine standpoint is lumbrokinase. Second thing is make your blood vessels more flexible so they flow more easily into your narrow blood vessels, all right? And that is to use ginkgo biloba. I already mentioned that earlier tonight. But ginkgo biloba makes your red blood cells more flexible, so they flow more easily, so the blood flows more easily in those narrow, spasming blood vessels, all right? And you would use it as 80 milligrams twice a day, all right? So you got 3 options. Either prescription calcium channel blockers, or herbally, you could use lumbrokinase combined with ginkgo biloba. All right. Thanks for that question, Victoria. Hello, Joe. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Do you find transfer factors to be helpful? Do they cause a herx? All right. So yes and yes. Now, let me round that out a little bit. Let me give you some understanding, or for those that aren't familiar with transfer factors, let me say a few more things. So transfer factors are proteins that are made by the immune system that give information to parts of the immune system to fight germs, okay? So usually when I have this discussion, I like to do a simplified Marty Ross explanation of the immune system, all right? Which is, for the sake of this discussion, I'm going to divide the immune system into 2 parts, all right? There are the detectives, and there's the army, all right? This is Marty Ross's explanation of the immune system, right? So the detectives are the cells in our immune system that can see an infection. And they have the ability to identify what it is and where it is. But they don't fight the battle. They have to give that information to the army part of the immune system, right? And they give that information 2 ways. First of all, they make cytokines. And I already talked about cytokines tonight. You know that cytokines turn the immune system on, but in Lyme, they're made too much, and they give you most of your Lyme symptoms, okay? But the other thing the detectives make are these things called transfer factors. They're proteins. And they give information to the army so the army knows what it's fighting and where it is, all right? It's got to decide what it's going to bring to fight the war, okay? All right, so there are transfer factors that are targeted transfer factors, ones that are made for specific germs. So when we have Bartonella in us, we will make transfer factors against Bartonella. When we have Babesia in us, we will make Babesia transfer factors, okay? And so there are targeted transfer factor mixes. There's one called Transfer Factor Lyme Plus made by a company called Research Nutritionals. And it has in it transfer factors against Borrelia, which is Lyme, Babesia, Bartonella, Ehrlichia, Anaplasma. Okay, those are all the Lyme co-infections. It also has in it transfer factors against Mycoplasma and Chlamydia pneumonia. I remember I told you tonight those are ones that are common even in healthy people. And then against 3 viruses, human herpes virus type 6, which is non-sexually transmitted herpes. It's a respiratory herpes, okay? Cytomegalovirus and the Epstein-Barr virus, all right? That is the most targeted transfer factor mix you can get. So when you're using that to help treat your Lyme, you want to do 1 pill twice a day. And in really depleted people that are really fatigued, I sometimes have found that just 1 a day can trigger a Herxheimer reaction in them, okay? So the company that makes it is Research Nutritionals, and it's called Transfer Factor Lyme Plus, all right? All right. Now, they also make a different product called Transfer Factor Multi-Immune, and what that is that is a transfer factor that turns on a type of cells that we have in our body called natural killer cells to fight viruses and bacteria. So it's kind of a general way of stimulating the immune system. And yes, that I would use as 1 pill twice a day, and I have even found that to trigger Herxheimer reactions, okay? When do I use transfer factors? Well, usually I'm going to consider adding them in to support the immune system. If I'm about 6 to 9 months into treatment, I'm not getting anywhere, I may consider using them, okay? I will also use them at times when I've decided to stop antibiotics to get a person off of those toxins, let their body recover for a little bit. I might use transfer factors in that situation as well too. And I will use the transfer factor multi-immune if we're in virus infection season, when a person that's getting every cold virus or stomach virus or flu virus that comes along, I might sometimes put them on transfer factor multi-immune to stimulate the antiviral part of their immune system to keep those viruses away, okay? So that, we're entering that time of year. I mean, we're not quite at the end of summer yet, but, as we get into fall, we start getting into flu and virus season. If you keep getting those kind of infections repeatedly, consider doing a transfer factor multi-immune, all right? All right, there you go. Joe, I hope that answers your question, and thank you for that, and good luck. Hello, Patrick. Let's see. Can we get our magnesium from daily Epsom salt baths? Also, I feel deeply asleep at the drop of a hat, then wake up wide awake every 2 to 3 hours. Eventually, I get back to sleep, then wake up again, like clockwork in 3 more hours. Is this common, and why might it be happening? So there are a lot of strange reactions regarding sleep that can happen for people with Lyme. The most common thing that can happen for sleep with people with Lyme is that they have a hard time initiating sleep. And even when they do get to sleep, they will wake frequently, okay? That's the most common pattern. This pattern you're describing, though, of falling asleep at the drop of the hat should be investigated to see if it might be also something called narcolepsy, which sometimes Lyme can trigger, but can happen separate from Lyme too. Narcolepsy means that you just fall asleep at random, okay? And so to see if that could be a problem, you would see a sleep specialist, and they would do a sleep study to figure out if you have a pattern suggesting that. All right, if it's narcolepsy, you need to be on some stimulants to help prevent that from happening. There aren't really good herbal options that I have found for narcolepsy, okay? But yeah, this is a pattern that could be from Lyme, but it may be something different than Lyme, okay? In terms of having sleep disturbances where you cannot stay asleep, that's common to Lyme. And what happens is, as you know, I keep talking about cytokines tonight. Those cytokines, one of the things they do in causing all your Lyme symptoms is they disturb your sleep centers. One of the things they do is disturb your sleep centers. So the parts of your brain that direct whether you're going to sleep or not. And so you can have sleep disturbances. So one thing to do is make sure you're lowering cytokines. Be on the curcumin, 500 milligrams 3 times a day that I've mentioned a number of times tonight, right? But the other thing, sometimes you just need to be on sleep medicines, okay? Sleep medicines or sleep herbs. And I'm not gonna go into that, but I'm gonna show you where you can get more information about that here tonight. So let me do a quick screen share here. All right, so I'm going into the Treat Lyme book. All right, so I'm at the site called the Treat Lyme book. Let me get all the way back up here to the top. All right, so I'm gonna look in the chapters of the Treat Lyme book, and I'm gonna look under the chapter on sleep, okay? I've got a whole chapter I've written on that. And there's one that is the sleep basics. This is sleep hygiene, okay? The kind of things that you want to do to make sure you set the stage so you can sleep. All right, and then I have an article about prescription medicines for sleep, and I have one about natural medicines for sleep, okay? Read through here, you'll see some good ideas that I have about how to get sleep, how to get the kind of sleep that's going to restore you. Okay? All right. Let me go back here. All right. Thanks for the question, Patrick. Hello, Sarah. See, most of my Lyme symptoms are gone, but I still have delayed reaction of extreme soreness and pain after exercise, lasting for days afterwards. What causes this, and what can I do about that? Thanks so much for addressing this. So, Sarah, there is a phenomenon that happens in Lyme disease, which is post-exertion fatigue or post-exertion worsening. Usually it's going to happen the day after you do too much, all right? So one thing to do is to find what your tolerance levels are. Know what they are. Know about how much activity you can do before you trigger a worsening like that, okay? And some of that you just figure out by trial and error, all right? But also then you can help that by training to that limit, and slowly over time with exercise, some people can go beyond what that wall is, all right? So exercise should be something you enjoy doing. It could be walking, it could be bike riding, could be swimming, all right? If you need help, sometimes visiting with a trainer that can help you get back into shape would be good, okay? Sometimes you have to get somebody that's a health coach, somebody that can help work with you to find a way to get your exercise program going. But the key thing is you got to exercise to tolerance. Figure out what your limit is and kind of start working up to that limit and start pushing it, extend it a little bit. So instead of 20 minutes of walking that you know causes your fatigue and your worsening, the next time do 22 minutes and try that daily for a week, and then gradually go up to 23 minutes and up to 24 minutes and up to 25 minutes. Just gradually increase the amount of exercise that you're doing, okay? Now, the other thing that you could look at doing too that could be this could be a sign of is when you have chronic infections like Lyme, it's very possible that the energy factories that are found in your cell, called mitochondria, they get injured. And they don't make energy well enough to give you that energy reserve that you need when you've been exercising, okay? So by some estimates, every one of our cells has about 300 to 400 mitochondria. Inside mitochondria is where cell fuel is created. And cell fuel is created by a bunch of chemical reactions that burn fat and sugar into cell fuel. Cell fuel is something called ATP. And there's a fancy cycle called Krebs cycle and something called oxidative phosphorylation that results in ATP cell fuel being made. Okay, so for those of you that have just come out of high school, the high schoolers these days learned everything about mitochondria and Krebs cycle. It isn't something I learned until I was in college, but the high schoolers these days actually know all about this stuff, all right? So anyhow, there's 300 or 400 mitochondria. When you have an infection, a chronic infection in you, there's an overproduction of oxidizing agents as a result of having this chronic infection. And oxidizing agents damage fat membranes, which can be our cell membranes, but also the membrane that makes up your mitochondria, which is a layer of fat, all right? So you can repair that. And there is a supplement that I like using called NT Factor Energy. It's a proprietary mix of phospholipid fats that make up your mitochondria, put together in a way to get absorbed well, okay? It's made by a company called Research Nutritionals. There is research that shows that NT Factor, if you use it as 2 pills 3 times a day for 2 months, that there are average energy improvements of 40% by 2 months of using that, all right? Now, I usually don't add it to my treatments until about 6 to 9 months in, because sometimes if you just get Lyme under control, the mitochondria will step in and start fixing themselves. But sometimes we need to help fix it with the NT factor, all right? So the other thing I would do in addition to NT factor is coenzyme Q10, 400 milligrams twice a day. But for those of you that are still been treating your Babesia with Malarone or with Mepron, do not use coenzyme Q10. It fouls up how those drugs work. Also, if you should be on a good antioxidant like N-acetylcysteine, also known as NAC, and that's 500 milligrams 3 times a day. And then finally, if you are not a red meat eater, if you don't have much red meat, you are going to be short in supply of a nutrient called carnitine. Carnitine is really important for mitochondria. It is a transport vehicle. It's a truck that carries fat from the outside of the mitochondria to the inside so it can be burned into cell fuel. And if you don't have enough carnitine, you are not going to bring enough fat in to create cell energy. Okay, so if you're not having red meat in your diet, then you want to be on acetyl L-carnitine. I have a Thorne product called Carnitil. And you want to take it as 500 milligrams twice a day for 1 month. And then after that, you decrease it to 500 milligrams one time a day. All right. All right. So I would do that, Sarah. I would look at rebuilding your mitochondria also to help with this. All right. And you want to rebuild over the course of 6 months. Do all these things I just said for 6 months. In terms of the NT factor, you double dose it for the first 2 months at 2 pills 3 times a day. And then for the remaining 4 months, you take it as 1 pill 3 times a day. All right. Now, if you want to see more about this before you listen to my recording again tomorrow, there is a whole article that I have written about mitochondria repair. Take a look at the chapters, look under energy and fatigue, and then take a look at my article called Power Up Energy and Mitochondria. All right. And that'll tell you how to fix your mitochondria. All right, let me go back here again. All right, thanks for that question, Sarah. Good luck to you. Hello, Jenny. Let's see, is there a co-infection that strikes like every 12 hours? Mine at 4 a.m. and about 4 p.m. Nausea, anxiety, weakness. Hits like a brick. No, I'm not aware of that being a co-infection, all right? Although, I will mention to you that you might want to get some help with that kind of cycling of your symptoms by seeing a Chinese medicine acupuncturist or a Japanese medicine acupuncturist, okay? Those are 2 styles of doing acupuncture, Japanese or Chinese. All right, so there in Chinese medicine and in Japanese medicine, there's a recognition that there is a flow of energy. And every one of our organs has an energy that is associated with it that has certain times of days that it will be at the maximum level and at the low level. And when you see a pattern of something getting worse or better on a pattern of every 12 or 24 hours from a Chinese medicine practitioner and from a Japanese style medicine practitioner, that usually means there's an energy flow problem that they can regulate with their needles, their acupuncture needles, or by giving you various Chinese or herbs, energetic herbs to influence that, okay? So that's what I would do. And again, if you're in the Seattle area, I wouldn't hesitate having you see the practitioner that I think does a great job with people with Lyme. His name is Randy Clare, Clere, okay? All right. So Ginny, good luck to you. Thank you for that question. Hello, Janie. Thank you, Dr. Ross, for your informative webinars. You're welcome. My son who just turned 19, was diagnosed in 2014 with a Lyme infection and mold toxicity. Do you think Lyme and mold should be treated together or separately, or does it matter? His adrenal glands are shot. Recently, he was experiencing hypoglycemia. All right, so people that have Lyme disease, as you know, have problems with too many cytokines, all right? And it's too many cytokines that give you all of your Lyme symptoms, all right? When you have mold toxicity issues, mold toxins also trigger cytokine excess. And so what happens is what mold toxin illness looks like can be identical to Lyme disease. And there are times I have found that if I just get rid of the mold toxin illness, that what looks like Lyme disease, even when a person has positive Lyme testing, that I don't need to treat the Lyme infection. I know that may sound kind of shocking, okay? And that's because they both look the same. And as you heard me say earlier tonight, just because you have a Lyme infection does not mean it gives you disease, all right? Just because you have Lyme infection does not mean it causes you problems. So generally, what my approach is to approach the mold toxin illness first for about 2 or 3 months and see how far I can get by detoxing the person. And sometimes that gets them 100% well, and then you don't need to treat the Lyme. All right, now that happens sometimes. Okay, now how did I stumble into this? Well, I learned the hard way, and the way that I learned the hard way is I one time had a patient named Krista Vanderham, and I'm using her name with permission. She is all over the internet. You can find her video, and you will see her story. Her name is Krista Vanderham. That's Vanderham. Her husband's name is Justin, and they have a website. I think it's Krista and Justin, but just Google her, you'll find her. Okay, so Krista came to see me for Lyme disease, and she was, I believe, about 19 or so at the time. Had a solid story of Lyme. I mean, it was a slam dunk Lyme diagnosis. She was doing mission work in New Zealand, got bit by a tick. I think she even had a bullseye rash, had symptoms consistent with the illness, and had positive Lyme testing. I mean, it was a slam dunk diagnosis. Okay. Now she was very, very sick. She was having daily seizures. She had episodes where she would stop breathing, had energy that was like 0 out of 10. I mean, I can go down the list. She was like one of the sickest people that I have seen. Okay. When she came to see me, we started her on IV antibiotics. And over the course of 2.5 years of treating her with IV antibiotics, with oral antibiotics, doing extensive amounts of detox, doing cytokine control, biofilm work. I mean, I went through about everything I know to do to get a person well. She only got about 85% better and was still having daily seizures and daily episodes of not breathing, okay? So I had just learned about mold toxin illness at that time. And I had her take a cholestyramine. And within 3 weeks of starting cholestyramine, which is a mold toxin binder, she went from having daily seizures, not being able to get out of bed, to actually smiling, moving around her house, cooking. I mean, you name it. She went back to about 70%, and over the course of a few months regained to 100%. At this time, all that she needs to do is periodically she'll start getting symptomatic again. At least the last time I talked to her, about every few months, she takes a day or so of cholestyramine to pull toxins out that she acquires from her environment, and she goes back to functioning 100%. All right. In retrospect, what she and I discovered after we saw this miracle that happened with her on cholestyramine is that in her home, the place that she had been living in New Zealand, there was black mold growing on the walls. So probably what had happened, that I think in retrospect, is that she was already swimming in mold toxins at a level that probably wasn't hurting her, but she was like at her max. Then she got her tick bite, and I think the toxins caused by Lyme added to the mold toxin illness she was already having, and it put her over the edge. And I think in retrospect, I always wonder now with Krista, if I had just known about mold toxin illness at that time, that she wouldn't have had to suffer like she did, and that she would have gotten better if we had just approached it differently from the beginning. And I just didn't know. I mean, it's no blame. She doesn't blame me. She thinks it was a miracle that God put me in her path, actually, that she got well, okay? But that's a lesson I learned, all right? So my approach these days, when I have somebody that has a strong chance that mold toxin illness is part of their picture, I'm going to do the detox work first and maybe even hold off for a couple months before I even consider start treating Lyme, okay? In fact, I just met with the patient today that is the approach I'm doing with him. And he has a positive Lyme test as well too, okay? Now, in terms of what do I think is adequate? Well, let me talk about mold toxin illness, okay? So many of you may be familiar. There's a physician named Richie Shoemaker, and Richie practices out in Maryland. He's come up with this whole elaborate theory that around 25% of all people have difficulty removing mold toxins and or Lyme toxins. They're very similar to each other. That if you breathe them in, or in case of Lyme, if they get in you because you have Lyme living in you, that 25% of us cannot remove them. What happens in 75% of us is our immune system will see them, tag them for removal. Those toxins go to the liver fat base. Liver sees that they've been tagged, transforms them into a water-based toxin. And because they're water-based, they get mixed in our poop in the intestines and we poop them out. That's how it's supposed to happen, all right? But in 25% of people, what happens is the immune system does not correctly recognize those toxins due to a genetic defect. They go to the liver not marked correctly, and they come out fat-based. And because they're fat-based, they get out into the intestines and they get reabsorbed again, okay? It's like you have a swimming pool of toxins that you cannot get out. And those toxins can give you high cytokines, they can give you seizures, they give you body pain, they can give you everything that looks like Lyme disease. So what you want to do is either use cholestyramine, which is what Richie Shoemaker would have people do. Trouble is, it's a hard medicine to take, but you want to take it at least 2 or 3 times a day for 2 months to see if it's going to work. If you get no response by 2 or 3 months of using it, then I say it's time to move on to your Lyme treatment, okay? Now, cholestyramine is hard to take because it can constipate some people. Also, there's a lot of timing issues with it. It binds up anything else that you take. So you have to stop it a half an hour before, you have to stop your medicines and supplements a half hour before you take cholestyramine. And then 2 hours after you have cholestyramine, you can restart them again, okay? That's hard to do for some people. So as an alternative, I will also have people do something called pectin powder. Pectin comes from apples, comes from citrus. It's a soluble fiber that also binds up toxins. And there's a product made by Thorne called fractionated pectin powder. All right, pectin powder. You do 5-gram scoop 3 times a day. All right. Now, whenever you start cholestyramine or you start your fractionated pectin powder, only start at 1 scoop a day. Do that for 7 days. If it does not trigger a huge flare up in your symptoms, then go up to 1 scoop twice a day for 7 days. And again, if it has not triggered a huge flare up in your symptoms, then go up to 1 scoop 3 times a day. The pectin powder is probably about 80% as potent as the cholestyramine. Cholestyramine usually is covered by your prescription plan, okay? All right, so those are just some thoughts that I have for you, okay? All right. And again, look at Krista's stuff is all over the internet. I haven't violated any patient confidentiality. I just want to let you know that. But you can find her and you can find the video that she's created about her whole ordeal that she went through. All right. Thank you for that question. Good luck to your son, too. Oh, let me see here. Janie, and everyone, I'm just going to show you, if you want to get more information about what I have discussed here with you tonight, just going to show you. So in the Treat Lyme book, again, everything I'm talking about, you can find an article in the Treat Lyme book. Anything that I'm not answering for you that you still want to know about, you can find an article in the Treat Lyme book, okay? So look under the problem solved section here. Look under detox. And you're going to see I've got some things in here like detoxification basics, the kind of things anyone would want to do. But also I've got this whole one called Lyme and Mold Toxins of Lyme Bite. That's where I give you the kind of details that I was just discussing with you. Okay? All right. And it's still current. I recorded this back in 2013, but the science about Lyme and mold toxins has not changed. How you approach it has not changed. Okay? All right. Let me go back here again. All right, let's see here. Hello, Donnie. Let's see, Donnie. I don't know if I'm saying the last part of your name correctly there. Anyhow, I'm sorry for that. Thank you, Dr. Ross. Let's see, I ended 28 days of doxy and 4 weeks prednisolone eye drops for an inflammation 2 weeks ago while following Buhner's protocol. There was progress, but still have symptoms, especially cognitive agitation, fatigue, etc. What should I do now? Donnie, I think you still need to be treated for Lyme, and you need to figure out whether you've got a co-infection going on that was not covered by Buhner protocol and was not covered by doxycycline, okay? So if you need help in that, see a Lyme literate medical doctor, or read through my treatment protocol and pay attention to the sections on how to diagnose Bartonella or Babesia. Or another option is do one of my consult visits, okay? So I could work with you one-on-one to help figure out some ideas for you. Let me do a quick screen share so I can show you how you would go about doing that. All right, so in the Treat Lyme book, there is this tab up here called Online Consult. And this is where I tell you how I can visit with you online and develop treatment ideas for you. Okay, some of those may require that you have a physician involved. Through this service, I cannot prescribe, but I can give you good recommendations. Okay, and so read through the specifics here. Talk about how it works. Talk about how you contact us. There's a whole paragraph about how it works, a disclaimer to review, and the requirements for what you'll need to do on your end for this to happen. Okay. But that's an idea for you to look at too. And in fact, anyone that needs some extra help, that either you want some added ideas to take to your physician, or you are looking for things to do on your own that you can't figure out from reading my material, then go ahead and take a look at that. All right. All right. Thank you for that question. Good luck. Hello, Val. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Love the webinars. Thank you. Curious about how the relationship between Lyme inflammation and the devastating effects on the body's systems, immune, endocrine, etc., and chronic Lyme patients. Your thoughts? All right. So the main problem with Lyme, again, is that Lyme causes the white blood cells, when they see Lyme, just like when they see any other infection, make cytokines. Okay. The problem, though, is that Lyme releases chemicals that suppress the immune system. And the immune system tries harder and harder to get rid of Lyme. Lyme also has other ways it evades the immune system, okay? And the immune system doesn't do a good job, but it tries harder and harder and eventually makes too many cytokines. That's the inflammation you're talking about, inflammation cytokines, okay? Now, those cytokines interfere with your sleep centers. And if you don't get enough sleep, that suppresses the immune system, all right? They also are suppressing the immune system directly. Cytokines have an immune suppression effect so that the immune system can't work. They also interfere with how a part of your brain called the hypothalamus pituitary works. That's the part that directs your adrenal glands and your thyroid, also directs your ovaries and your testicles if you're a man. And so the cytokines interfere with the correct functioning there, okay? So that's what it does, all right? Now, what do you do about the cytokines? Well, you got to lower them. So got to work with curcumin. There's other ideas I have. If you don't want to do curcumin, there's some other ideas. Take a look at my article in the Treat Lyme book about cytokines. I give you a number of ways to work on lowering those cytokines. Actually, I'll just show you quickly where you find that. All right, so I'm going to the Treat Lyme book. All right, so I'm back in the Treat Lyme book here. I'm going to go to the section on Herxheimer and cytokines. I could have named this inflammation. Take a look at this chapter here called Control Cytokines, a guide to fix Lyme symptoms and the immune system, okay? This talks all about cytokines and the various ways that I recommend for managing them, okay? All right. All right, thank you for that question, Val. And good luck to you. All right. Hello, Jenny. Hold on, here's I'm going to take a swig of water. All right, let's see. My DMSA test results showed that I have mercury toxicity. I'm in the process of having all my dental amalgams removed. My dentist wants to pull my root canal tooth and replace it with titanium tooth implant. I have no pain or inflammation where the root canal tooth is. What should I do? Thanks. That's kind of complicated. I don't have a precise answer, but I'm going to give you some things to think about, okay? So one of the things that can happen in Lyme is that Lyme likes to live where there is not good oxygen. So it likes to live on nerve coverings, likes to get inside your joints, lives on muscle and tendon coverings, lives in scar tissue, and it will live in pockets left from your root canal, okay? So that root canal sitting there could be a mini pocket of infection where Lyme is living. So generally, I think it is a good idea to pull the tooth and remove it. The titanium may provide a source where Lyme can live around, or sometimes the dentist gets them in good. But titanium is a foreign object going in your mouth. And I don't think it's good to put foreign objects in us that stay permanently, that are foreign, that the immune system may decide it has problems with, even titanium, okay? So but I don't have any research that shows what I'm saying, okay? There's no research that says titanium is going to make your Lyme worse, all right? But my preference is in Lyme, don't put breast implants in, don't put dental implants in. As much as you can, don't put things in that your immune system might start deciding it has a problem with, making everything worse for your Lyme disease, okay? That's just my philosophy on things, all right? All right. Thank you for that question, Jenny. Let's see. Hello, Jake. Let's see. I live in upstate New York. 8 months of migrating joint, muscle, and rib pain. IGeneX Western blot, the IgM 39 band was indeterminate, 41 was positive, 8393 band was indeterminate. What other than BV can cause indeterminate on these particular bands? Cross reaction, currently on 7 days of doxy, and on day 4 it got much worse. Any advice? All right. So what Jake has given us here is the results of his Western blot. Okay, so Western blot is a test that is designed to see if your immune system has made antibodies that attach to proteins found on the covering of the Lyme germ. All right. And antibodies are actually proteins themselves too. And what they do is they attach to a germ and they act like a big radio signaling tower device that sends out signals to the rest of the immune system to say, hey, I got a germ, come get it. Okay. That's what an antibody does. Now, they don't hold on to a whole germ. They don't like wrap themselves around the germ. Okay. They hold on to small parts, like they grab onto the protein here. Okay. And each of those proteins that make up the covering of the Lyme germ have a different weight. And we identify, when we do the Western blot test through IGeneX, we look to see if you have antibodies against 12 proteins. And we identify them by what they weigh, all right? So there is a protein on the covering of the Lyme germ that weighs 39 kilodaltons. Kilodalton's a microscopic unit of weight. So that band 39 that you have there, that means there's something showing up on that 39 protein, okay? Now, the way that we interpret the Western blot is we create 2 test strips in the lab. We can create your test strip and we can create a control test strip, okay? And we are always comparing what happens on your test strip to the control strip. First step is we kill a bunch of Lyme germs, we strip their proteins, we put their proteins at the bottom of the test strip, and we run electricity through it. And what that does is that distributes the proteins into the test strip based on what they weigh. So if we could see things, which we can't, we would see all of those proteins at position 39 we would see a bunch of proteins at position 39, at 41, etc. Okay, because all the proteins that weigh the same fall out at the same spot. Okay. Second step is to take antibodies from your blood, in this case, Jake, smear your antibodies on your test strip, and wherever you are making antibodies that attach to Lyme proteins, they should attach. And then on the control strip, we take a sample that has antibodies against each one of those proteins and we smear it on the control strip. And now, because we designed it this way, we have antibodies stuck on every protein on that control strip. But we still can't see anything. Okay. Third step is where we start seeing things. And that is that we add a coloring agent that attaches to antibodies that are stuck on Lyme proteins. Now we can see things. All right, so the way we figure out what's going on in your strip is we compare it to the control strip. And if you have as much color at a protein as there is on the control strip, you get a positive. If you have something showing up at that position, but it's not as much color as the protein on the control strip, you get an indeterminate. If you have a lot of color showing up on that control strip, more than you see, if you have a lot of color showing up on your test strip at a protein, and it is much deeper than the control strip, you get 2 pluses or 3 pluses, okay? All right, so it's always a comparison, all right? So what does indeterminate mean? Well, indeterminate could mean that there is dirt that showed up on the test strip during the test process. It's a test artifact, okay? Or it could mean you are making antibodies, but because of immune suppression, your immune system is having a hard time making many, and therefore on your test strip, you're not holding on to much color. All right. So those indeterminates are either weak antibodies or they are that you've got dirt showing up. All right. Now, if they are weak antibodies, they could also be antibodies made against another infection that just happens to attach to Lyme proteins. But it would be rare at 39 and 8393. Okay. So usually what I'll do with this kind of a situation is I'll do an antibiotic challenge, where if I've got somebody who has a lot of Lyme symptoms, risk of getting Lyme, being where you live in New York State, there you have risk of getting Lyme. What I'll do is I'll use an antibiotic that treats Lyme intracellularly, gets inside Lyme, gets inside the spirochete, gets inside of our own cells. So I'll use like a Biaxin or a doxycycline or a minocycline or a Zithromax, and I'll use it for a month, and then I come back and redo the test. And the reason I do that, what happens is when you use antibiotics for a month, you can kill off some of the Lyme germs so you have less immune suppression, so the immune system can make more antibodies, all right? Secondly, one of the other problems in having a strong immune system reaction is the immune system has to see the Lyme germ. And Lyme likes to live in tissues that don't have good blood flow. So they live in your joints, on tissues that cover your muscles and tendons, on your nerve coverings, all right, places that the immune system can't see it. So if you use antibiotics for a month, the antibiotics will kill the Lyme germs, releasing, and the tissues don't like to hold on to those dead bug parts. So they release them into the bloodstream where, guess what? The immune system can see it now and have a stronger antibody reaction, okay? So that's what I would do. I'd do an antibiotic. I would do, after a month of being on antibiotics, I would come back and retest again. That's how I do it, okay? Yes, being on antibiotics and getting worse suggests a Herxheimer reaction, which may give you another clue that Lyme could be happening, but it doesn't prove it. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Jake. Thank you for that question. All right. So everyone, I'm going to just do a quick screen share here again. Okay, so let's see here. All right, so I'm going to look under the chapters again, and they're in this section in the chapters called Lyme Disease 101. Take a look, if I can get my mouse to perform correctly. We're going to go to the test under Lyme Disease 101. And if you want a better description or picture of what I just described about how you interpret a Western blot, take a look at this article here called The Western Blot Lyme Disease Test on Lyme Bite. It is a recording where I actually have a Western blot that I cover with you. Okay? All right. There you go. Let me go back here again. Let's see here. All right. Hello, Kathy. Let's see. Hi, doctor. Tick bite 2 months ago. Started doxymalarone for Lyme and Babesia 1 month ago. Chills, headaches decreased, but still lingering twitches and new symptom of facial tingles, arthritic feeling in toes and eye prickles. Last day of doxy. How should I continue on? So I would continue. You need to treat until you're symptom free. So first of all, that if you have Babesia and your symptoms make me wonder, although I would need to know more symptoms. I don't have, I'm not getting to ask you questions here, okay? But Babesia can take a few months to get over acutely. Lyme can take, if you start treating with antibiotics about a month or more after your tick bite, it can be about 2 months to 3 months to get over Lyme. The other thing I would do here with your Lyme, so the Malarone you're taking is for Babesia, and that has helped to treat Babesia with the doxy. Doxy is treating intracellular Lyme and spirochete Lyme, but for the Lyme infection itself, it's not treating the cyst form of the Lyme germ. So you need to add coverage in, something to treat the cyst form of the Lyme germ too, okay? And so what I would suggest for that is the herb called grapefruit seed extract. It's a 250 milligram pill, and I would do 1 pill twice a day. And I would suggest treating until you are symptom-free for at least a month. All right, so I'd keep going, okay? All right, good luck to you, Kathy. Thank you for that question. Hello, Brenda. Let's see. How do you treat depression in Lyme disease patients naturally? So there's a couple things that I like to use. One is a supplement called 5-hydroxytryptophan, or another supplement called St. John's wort. In fact, in Germany, among health practitioners, the #1 prescribed thing for depression is not prescriptions like we do here in the States, but it's St. John's wort. Now, to be honest with you, we don't fully know how St. John's wort works. There's theories about it, but you want to take around 300 milligrams 3 times a day. I give it a 60% chance it'll work, okay, which is equal to prescription antidepressant medicine. Same chance, all right? Yep. Prescription antidepressant medicines only work about 60% of the time. Any one only works about 60% of the time. You need to give your St. John's wort at least 2 weeks to see if it's going to work, okay? The other alternative is to take something called 5-hydroxytryptophan, and that's HYDROXY, and then tryptophan, TRYPTOPHAN. Got to remember that off the top of my head there. And it's a 50 milligram pill that it comes as. I usually start people at 50 milligrams 3 times a day for 1 week, and then I go up to 100 milligrams 3 times a day. All right, so what that does is it's a building block for a brain chemical called serotonin. And if you raise serotonin, that can lift you out of depression. By comparison, the more popular family of prescription antidepressant medicines, the Prozac family, also called the SSRIs, Celexa, Lexapro, Zoloft, Paxil, Prozac, those are all the Prozac medicines, as I call them. They also work to elevate serotonin, but they do so by blocking the destruction of serotonin in your brain, okay? But you can raise serotonin by just helping your brain produce more by being on the 5-hydroxytryptophan, all right? So let me just show you something here. I'm gonna do a quick screen share. All right, so you can find, I have written an article about that in the Treat Lyme book. You can find it in the mental health chapter, okay? Mental health there, okay? The other thing that I just want to show you quickly is, so this is, I get asked every one of our webinars and afterwards where to get supplements, okay? Because the problem with supplements is there are just a lot of garbage products out there. They're garbage either because they use fillers that might harm you in Lyme disease, or they've sourced the ingredients that are supposed to work, and they've used lower cost materials and as a means of saving money, but sometimes they give up on quality that way too. They may choose things that don't work as well, all right? So if you're looking at what we use here, what I use here, Dr. Brooke actually isn't working anymore. But if here at the clinic, if you use what I use here at the Healing Arts Partnership, if you want to know what it is, take a look here. Okay, you can either search by name or you can look by medical problem. All right. So if you want to use what we use for 5-hydroxytryptophan, just type it in here. So you'll see the products that we recommend. I spent a lot of time searching for what would be provide the greatest chance of working with the best ingredients and the lowest chance of harming a person. All right. So take a look. All right. Just wanted to show you that. Let me go back here again. Okay, let's see, there we are. All right, so Brenda, thank you for that question. Okay, one more from Brenda. Let's see here. Thanks, Dr. Ross. Tried Bactrim and had a very strong neurologic reaction, nightmares, electrical zaps that wake me up, and more buzzing and tingling sensations. What do you recommend to ease these symptoms? What is your best recipe for neuroalignment, Bart? Okay, so Brenda, first of all, this is beyond. This sounds like side effect to me more than Herxheimer reaction, and I would consider getting off of it. Okay, and I would consider trying some other alternatives. You might want to look at. Well, the problem with me giving you recommendations, I don't know what you have. I don't know enough about what your symptoms are to say if you truly have Bartonella or not. So I can't say exactly what's the next best thing for you to take, okay? I'm sorry about that, but I need to know more information to do that, okay? All right. But I wonder about the Bactrim giving you side effects, actually, as opposed to a true Herxheimer reaction, all right? All right. Thank you for that question. Good luck. All right. That's it for me, everyone. It's about 6:30. So thanks for being here tonight. You will get an email from me tomorrow morning saying when the recording has been edited and is ready for you to review again. Again, I'm not going to have another webinar for 2 weeks. I'm going to take the next 2 Wednesdays off, and then we will resume in mid-September. I encourage you, if you do want my help before then, you can take a look at reading the Treat Line book, okay? Again, most of the things that I get asked questions about, you can probably find answers to in the Treat Line book. I'm going to take you to the Treat Line book here in a second. I'd appreciate if you actually subscribe to the book, and you can do that by clicking on any of the articles, and you'll be asked to subscribe if it's not a free article. And there's only 4 free articles, so you're going to be asked to subscribe. And so if you do that, you support the work that I'm doing here on the webinars, and you also support my efforts to write more articles as well, too. All right? So thanks for being here tonight. Good luck, everyone, and see you in a few weeks. Bye-bye.